Crash! The front door shook like it had been hit by a battering ram, the sound slicing through the cozy hum of our suburban evening. My daughter, Kayla, a 32-year-old Navy SEAL trainer, froze mid-bite, her fork dangling over a plate of lasagna. Her hazel eyes, usually warm and teasing, snapped to the door with the sharpness of a hawk spotting prey. "Who the hell is that, Dad?" she asked, her voice low, already laced with the calm intensity she'd honed training elite soldiers. I shuffled to the window, my heart thumping, and peeked through the blinds. There he was, Carl, the neighborhood's self-proclaimed HOA enforcer, pacing our porch like a wannabe sheriff in a bad western. But this was no movie. Carl wasn't just knocking, he was waving a pistol, his face red as he shouted about a violation. My stomach dropped. He was targeting Kayla, and he had no clue who he was dealing with. Sunnyvale Estates, our quiet cul-de-sac in a sleepy corner of North Carolina, had been on edge for months. The HOA, led by Carl's inflated ego and a board of his cronies, had turned our once friendly neighborhood into a battleground over petty rules. A gnome on your lawn? Fine. A mailbox painted the wrong shade of blue. Warning letter. Kids drawing chalk rainbows on the sidewalk. Carl would be there with a hose and a scowl. He wasn't a cop, just a middle-aged guy with a cheap security vest, a concealed carry permit, and way too much time on his hands. Neighbors whispered about him, calling him the HOA cop behind his back, but no one dared confront him. Until now, Kayla had arrived 2 days earlier, home on a rare 2-week leave from her base in Virginia Beach, where she trained Navy SEAL candidates to survive the kind of high-stakes situations most of us only see in movies. She was my pride and joy, tough as nails, but with a heart that still laughed at my bad dad jokes. Her black pickup truck parked in our driveway had apparently triggered Carl's latest crusade. According to his sacred HOA rulebook, vehicles over a certain size couldn't stay in driveways overnight. Never mind that Kayla's truck was her lifeline, packed with gear for her next training session. To Carl, it was a personal insult. "Dad, stay back," Kayla said, setting her fork down with deliberate calm. She stood, her athletic frame moving with the grace of someone who'd run obstacle courses under live fire. Her short cropped hair caught the kitchen light, and I noticed the faint scar above her eyebrow, a souvenir from a training mishap she never talked about. I grabbed her arm, my voice tight. "Kay, he's got a gun." She glanced at me, her lips curling into a faint, almost mischievous smirk. "So do I," she said. "My training." My heart raced. I'd seen Kayla in action before, sparring with recruits, leading drills. But this was different. This was our home, our porch, our lives on the line. And Carl, with his shaky grip on that pistol, was about to learn what happens when you mess with a SEAL trainer. I followed her to the door, my phone clutched in my sweaty palm, ready to dial 911. Outside, Carl's voice grew louder, his words a jumble of regulations and authority. The porch light cast harsh shadows on his face, making his comb-over look even more ridiculous. But the gun in his hand was no joke. A sleek handgun, glinting as he gestured wildly. Neighbors had started to notice. Across the street, Mrs. Larson's curtains twitched. Down the block, a dog barked, sensing the tension. Kayla paused at the door, her hand on the knob, and took a slow breath. I'd seen that look before, when she was about to ace a test or face down a challenge. "Let's see what this guy's deal is," she muttered, more to herself than me. As she opened the door, the warm summer air hit us, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass and the faint buzz of cicadas. Carl stopped pacing, his eyes locking onto Kayla like she was the enemy. "You!" he snapped, pointing at her truck. "That vehicle's in violation. Move it now, or I'll have it towed." The gun was still in his hand, not aimed directly but held low, its presence a silent threat. I felt my pulse hammer in my throat. Kayla, though, didn't flinch. She stepped onto the porch, her boots thudding softly, and crossed her arms. "Sir, I'm a guest here," she said, her voice steady as steel. "You want to talk about my truck? Fine, but put the gun away first." Carl blinked, thrown off by her calm. Most people in Sunnyvale cowered when he started his tirades, not Kayla. She stood there, 5'8", of pure confidence, her posture relaxed but ready, like a coiled spring. I hovered in the doorway, my phone now recording just in case. The neighborhood felt like it was holding its breath. Carl's face twisted, his ego bruised. "You don't tell me what to do," he spat, stepping closer, the gun still in his grip. Big mistake. Kayla's eyes narrowed, and I could almost hear her training kicking in. Assess, strategize, act. This wasn't just a standoff, it was a masterclass in courage, and Carl was about to get schooled. Kayla swung the door open, stepping onto the porch with the confidence of someone who'd stared down chaos and won. The warm summer air hit us, thick with the scent of mowed grass and the distant hum of cicadas. Carl stopped pacing, his eyes locking onto her like she was a target. He was in his usual getup, a polyester security vest that screamed mall cop, cargo pants, and that gleaming handgun clutched in his sweaty hand. "You!" he barked, jabbing a finger at Kayla's truck parked in the driveway. "That vehicle's in violation of HOA regulations. Move it now or I'll have it towed." The gun wasn't pointed directly at her, but he held it low, its barrel glinting under the porch light. A clear threat. My heart hammered as I hovered in the doorway, phone in hand, thumb hovering over 911. Kayla stood tall, her 5'8" frame radiating authority. Her arms were crossed, her posture relaxed, but ready, like a coiled spring. Years of training elite soldiers had taught her to read situations and people like a book. Carl was a chapter she'd seen before, a bully hiding behind a rule book desperate for control. "Sir," she said, her voice steady as a sniper's aim, "put the gun away, then we can talk about the truck." Her tone wasn't aggressive, but it carried the weight of someone who didn't negotiate with amateurs. Carl blinked, caught off guard. Most neighbors would have cowered or groveled by now, but Kayla wasn't most neighbors. She was a Navy SEAL trainer, forged in high-stakes environments where hesitation meant failure. Carl's face reddened, his ego bruised. "You don't tell me what to do, lady," he spat, stepping closer, the gun still in his grip. His voice rose, a mix of bravado and nerves. "I'm HOA security. I have authority here." The word authority dripped with self-righteous glee, but his hand trembled, betraying his nerves. Kayla's eyes narrowed, tracking every twitch of his fingers. I could see her mind working, assessing the threat, distance, angle, intent. "You're pointing a weapon at a civilian over a parking spot," she said, each word deliberate, cutting through the humid air. "That's not just stupid, it's illegal. Lower the gun, now." Her voice was calm, but it carried an edge, like a blade sheathed but ready to draw. The neighborhood was waking up to the drama. Across the street, Mrs. Larson's curtains parted, her face a mix of fear and curiosity. Down the block, the Wilsons' teenage son Jake leaned out his window, phone already recording. A dog barked furiously, sensing the tension. Carl, oblivious to the growing audience, doubled down. "You think you're tough?" He sneered, taking another step forward, the gun now raised slightly, not aimed but dangerously close to it. My breath caught. I wanted to yell, to pull Kayla back, but she shot me a glance, sharp, commanding. "Stay out of this, Dad." I gripped, my phone tighter, recording now, my hand shaking. Kayla didn't flinch. She shifted her weight slightly, her body angled to minimize her profile. A subtle move I'd seen her practice in training videos she'd shown me years ago. "I'm giving you one more chance," she said, her voice low but firm. "Put the gun down or I will." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise, delivered with the certainty of someone who disarmed bigger threats than Carl. His eyes widened, a flicker of doubt crossing his face, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. "You're nobody," he shouted, his voice cracking. "I run this neighborhood." He waved the gun for emphasis, a reckless move that made my heart lurch. The tension was electric, the kind of moment where time slows and every detail burns into memory. Kayla's scar above her eyebrow caught the light, a reminder of the hell she'd been through to earn her skills. Her hands were steady, her breathing controlled, while Carl's chest heaved, his bravado crumbling under her unyielding stare. Neighbors were openly gawking now. Mr. Thompson stood on his lawn, his phone out, whispering to his wife. A kid on a bike had stopped at the corner, filming like he was capturing the next viral video. And he probably was. "Carl," Kayla said, her voice almost gentle now, like she was talking a recruit through a panic attack. "You're making this worse for yourself. Put it down." He didn't. Instead, he took another step, closing the gap to just a few feet. The gun now pointed at the ground between them, but still far too close. "Move the damn truck!" he yelled, spit flying. Kayla's jaw tightened, the only sign she was done playing nice. I could almost hear her mental checklist. De-escalation. Failed. Threat imminent. Action required. She wasn't just my daughter anymore. She was the warrior who trained men and women to survive the unthinkable. And Carl, with his shaky grip and inflated ego, was about to learn what that meant. Section 3. The takedown. In a flash, Kayla struck. With the speed of a predator, she sidestepped, grabbed Carl's wrist, and twisted with surgical precision. The gun clattered to the porch before he could blink. What the... Carl yelped as Kayla pinned his arm behind his back, forcing him to his knees in one fluid motion. "You done?" she asked, her tone almost bored. I stood frozen, my phone still recording, as my daughter disarmed this wannabe cop like he was a training dummy. Neighbors gasped, their videos already destined for YouTube. In a heartbeat, Kayla exploded into action. With the precision of a predator honed by years of training Navy SEALs, she sidestepped Carl's outstretched arm, her movements a blur of controlled power. Before he could react, she grabbed his wrist, the one clutching the gun with a grip like steel. In one fluid motion, she twisted, using his momentum against him. The pistol clattered to the wooden porch with a dull thud, skidding toward the railing. Carl's eyes widened, his mouth opening in a shocked yelp. What the... But Kayla wasn't done. With the grace of a dancer and the force of a freight train, she swept his legs, forcing him to his knees. In a split second, she had his arm pinned behind his back, her knee lightly pressed against his spine, locking him in place. "You done?" she asked, her voice calm, almost bored, as if disarming a wannabe tough guy was just another Tuesday. I stood frozen in the doorway, my phone still recording, my jaw practically on the floor. My daughter, all 5'8" of her, had just neutralized a man waving a gun like he was in a bad action movie. Carl squirmed, his face a mix of pain and disbelief. "You can't do this," he sputtered, his comb-over flopping pathetically. "I'm HOA security." Kayla leaned in slightly, her voice low but firm. "You're a guy with a power trip and a gun you shouldn't have, threatening people over a truck. That's how you lose everything." Her words weren't loud, but they carried the weight of someone who'd faced real threats, hostile environments, live fire, high-stakes missions, and come out on top. The neighborhood was alive now. The quiet cul-de-sac transformed into a stage. Across the street, Mrs. Larson gasped from her porch, her phone capturing every second. The Wilsons' teenager, Jake, hung out his window, filming with a grin like he'd just won the lottery. Down the block, Mr. Thompson and his wife stood on their lawn, whispering furiously, their own video rolling. A kid on a bike at the corner whooped, sensing the drama was about to go viral. And it would. This wasn't just a scuffle. It was a masterclass in courage, unfolding under the glow of our porch light. Carl, still pinned, tried to twist free, but Kayla's hold was unbreakable. Her training had taught her to restrain without harming, to control without escalating. "Stop moving," she said, her tone flat but commanding. "You're only making this worse." Carl's bravado was crumbling, his voice cracking as he muttered about HOA authority and lawsuits. Kayla didn't flinch. She glanced at me, her eyes flicking to my phone. "Dad, you got this recorded?" I nodded, my hands shaky but the footage steady. "Good," she said. "Cops'll need it." I'd seen Kayla in action before, sparring with recruits, running drills and videos she'd sent me, but this was different. This was our home, our porch, and she was protecting it with the same fierce precision she brought to her work. My heart swelled with pride, but fear gnawed at me too. Carl's gun lay just feet away, a stark reminder of how close this had come. To disaster. Kayla, though, was a rock. Her scar above her eyebrow, a memento from a training accident she never discussed, caught the light as she held Carl down. She wasn't just my daughter, she was a warrior, and Carl had picked the wrong fight. The wail of sirens cut through the night, growing closer. Red and blue lights flashed at the end of the street, and neighbors stepped closer, their whispers turning to murmurs of awe. Kayla didn't relax her grip, but she spoke to Carl again, her voice almost gentle now. "You could have walked away," she said. "Instead, you pulled a gun on a Navy SEAL trainer. Bad call." Carl's face paled, the reality sinking in. He hadn't known who Kayla was, hadn't expected resistance, let alone a takedown that left him eating porch boards. As the police car screeched to a stop, two officers jumped out, hands on their holsters. "Ma'am, step back," one called, assessing the scene. Kayla complied, releasing Carl but staying ready, her body still coiled. "He's unarmed now," she said, nodding toward the gun on the porch. "He was threatening me with it over a parking dispute." Her report was crisp, professional, like she was debriefing a mission. The officers exchanged glances, clearly impressed. They cuffed Carl, who was still blabbering about his authority, and secured the weapon. One cop, a burly guy with a buzz cut, looked at Kayla with a mix of respect and curiosity. "You military?" he asked. "Navy SEAL trainer," she replied, matter of fact. He whistled. Explains a lot. The police car screeched to a halt, red and blue lights painting the cul-de-sac in a surreal glow. Two officers leapt out, hands on holsters, assessing the scene with practiced efficiency. Ma'am, step back. The taller one, a burly man with a buzz cut, called out. Kayla complied, releasing Carl but staying alert, her body still poised like a coiled spring. He's unarmed now, she said, nodding toward the gun on the porch. He was threatening me with it over a parking dispute. Her voice was crisp, professional, like she was debriefing a mission. The second officer, a younger woman with a notepad, secured the weapon in an evidence bag, her eyes flicking between Kayla and the still sputtering Carl, who was now on his feet, wrist cuffed behind him. You can't do this. Carl whined, his comb-over flopping as he twisted against the cuffs. I'm HOA security. I have rights. The buzzcut officer raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. Sir, you pointed a gun at a civilian. You're lucky you're still standing. He turned to Kayla, his expression softening. You military? He asked, noting her calm authority. Navy SEAL trainer, she replied, matter of fact. He let out a low whistle. Explains a lot. Nice work. The female officer nodded, scribbling notes. We'll need your statement, ma'am. And that video, she added, glancing at my phone, which was still recording, my hands shaky from adrenaline. As the officers hauled Carl to the squad car, his protests fading into incoherent mumbles, I finally exhaled. The neighborhood was buzzing. Now, the quiet cul-de-sac transformed into a spectacle. Mrs. Larson, our nosy neighbor, stood on her porch, clutching her phone, her eyes wide with awe. The Wilsons' teenager Jake was still filming, grinning like he just captured gold. Down the street, a small crowd had gathered. Mr. Thompson and his wife, the young couple from number 12, even the kid on the bike, all whispering, pointing, and recording. The clips were already spreading, destined for YouTube and X, with headlines like Navy SEAL trainer humiliates HOA tyrant. The police took Kayla's statement on the porch, where she recounted the incident with the precision of a courtroom. Veteran. He approached with the weapon drawn, refused to de-escalate, and advanced aggressively. She said, her voice steady. I handed over my video, which showed Carl's reckless gun waving and Kayla's lightning-fast takedown. The buzzcut officer watched it on my phone, shaking his head. Ma'am, you could teach our recruits a thing or two. Kayla just shrugged, brushing off the praise. Just doing what I'm trained for, she said, but I caught the faintest hint of a smile. She was proud, even if she'd never admit it. As the squad car pulled away with Carl, the officers shared what they'd learned. His security role was a sham. He'd bought the vest online and had no official authority. Worse, his gun wasn't properly registered, and his concealed carry permit was under scrutiny. He's looking at serious charges, the female officer said. Brandishing a firearm, reckless endangerment, maybe more once we dig deeper. I felt a wave of relief, but also anger. This man had terrorized our neighborhood for months, and it took my daughter facing down a gun to stop him. By morning, the story had exploded. My phone buzzed with notifications, texts from neighbors, alerts from X, even a call from a local news station wanting an interview. The video, now viral, racked up thousands of views with comments like, "This woman's a legend," and HOA tyrants beware. The neighborhood's group chat was on fire, with residents sharing their own Carl horror stories. Fines for minor infractions, threats over petty disputes, even a rumor he'd tried to tow a disabled veteran's car. Kayla's takedown wasn't just a moment, it was a spark. Neighbors started showing up at our door, bearing casseroles, cookies, and gratitude. Mrs. Larson, usually the queen of gossip, hugged Kayla, tears in her eyes. You gave that bully what he deserved, she said. Jake's mom brought a homemade pie, calling Kayla a hero. Even Mr. Thompson, a gruff retiree who rarely spoke, shook her hand. About time someone stood up to him, he grunted. Kayla, ever humble, brushed it off, but I could see the attention was wearing on her. She'd come home for a quiet break, not to become a viral sensation. The HOA board, scrambling to save face, issued a public apology on their website, claiming Carl's actions were not representative of their values. They fired his buddy, the HOA president, who'd enabled his reign of terror. A community meeting was scheduled to revise the bylaws, and neighbors were already organizing to demand transparency. Kayla's stand had done more than disarm one. Man, it had woken up Sunnyvale Estates. But for her, it was just another day. As we sat in the kitchen that evening, she finally ate her now cold lasagna, rolling her eyes when I mentioned the viral video. "I just wanted a week off, Dad," she said, but her smirk told me she was glad she'd made a difference. A few days after the chaos, Kayla and I sat at the kitchen table, the morning sun streaming through the window. She sipped her coffee, her hazel eyes thoughtful as she stared at the steam rising from her mug. "Dad," she said, her voice quieter than usual, "this whole thing with Carl, it's not just about him. It's about bullies who hide behind power, thinking they can scare people into submission." I nodded, stirring my own coffee, still processing the whirlwind of the past week. Kayla's stand against Carl had done more than disarm a wannabe. Show a cop, it had ignited a spark in Sunnyvale Estates, and the flames were spreading. Kayla leaned back, her athletic frame relaxed, but her mind clearly working. "I see it in training all the time," she continued. "People who crave control because they're scared of losing it. Carl's no different. He had a vest, a gun, and a rule book, so he thought he was untouchable. But power like that, it's fragile. You push back, and it crumbles." Her words hit hard. I'd always known my daughter was tough. Years of training elite soldiers will do that. But hearing her break it down like this, I saw the depth of her wisdom. She wasn't just a warrior, she was a leader, someone who understood the world's fault lines and how to navigate them. The neighborhood was transformed in the days that followed. Sunnyvale Estates, once a place where people kept their heads down to avoid Carl's wrath, was alive with chatter and action. The viral video of Kayla's takedown, now dubbed the Seal Smackdown online, had turned her into a local legend. Comments poured in, "This woman's my hero. HOAs are the worst. Give her a medal." But it wasn't just internet hype. Neighbors were done cowering. They organized, flooding the HOA's inbox with demands for transparency and fair rules. The group chat buzzed with plans for a community meeting where residents would vote on new bylaws to curb the board's overreach. Mrs. Larson, our nosy but well-meaning neighbor, became an unexpected ringleader. She knocked on our door with a clipboard, her eyes gleaming. "Kayla, you lit a fire under us," she said, thrusting a petition at her. "We're getting signatures to dissolve the current board and elect new members. You in?" Kayla smiled but shook her head. "I'm leaving for base soon, but I'll sign." She scribbled her name and Mrs. Larson beamed like she'd just recruited a celebrity. Other neighbors followed suit. Mr. Thompson, the gruff retiree, started a Sunnyvale Freedom Fund to cover legal fees for challenging the HOA. Even Jake, the teenager who'd filmed the takedown, designed flyers for the meeting, his usual smirk replaced with purpose. The HOA board, desperate to save face, held an emergency session. Their apology letter, posted online, was a masterclass in backpedaling. Carl's actions were unacceptable and do not reflect our values. They fired the president, Carl's buddy, who'd turned a blind eye to his antics. But it wasn't enough. At the community meeting, packed with residents who'd never bothered to attend before, the board faced a reckoning. People shared stories of Carl's bullying, fines for trivial infractions, threats over minor disputes, even harassing a single mom over her car's oil stain. Kayla's stand had given them courage to speak out, and the board couldn't hide anymore. By the end, residents voted to overhaul the bylaws, limiting the HOA's power and banning enforcers like Carl. Kayla watched it all unfold quietly, staying out of the spotlight. She'd never wanted to be a hero. She'd just reacted the way her training demanded. But I could see the pride in her eyes when neighbors thanked her, their voices thick with gratitude. "You changed things here," I told her the night before she left. She shrugged, packing her duffel bag with the same precision she brought to everything. "I just did what needed doing, Dad. People needed a push to stand up for themselves." That was Kayla, always seeing the bigger mission, even in a suburban showdown. As she loaded her truck to head back to Virginia Beach, the neighborhood felt different. Kids drew chalk art on the sidewalks again, unafraid of Carl's hose. Lawns sprouted quirky decorations, a flamingo here, a gnome there. Sunnyvale Estates was reclaiming its soul. I hugged Kayla goodbye, my throat tight. "You're something else, kid," I said. She grinned, that faint smirk I loved. "Just doing my job." As her truck pulled away, I stood on the porch, awestruck by my daughter, the warrior who'd turned a bully's power trip into a revolution. For our YouTube audience, this story isn't just about one crazy HOA guy, it's a call to action. Kayla showed us that standing up to tyrants, big or small, starts with courage. Whether it's an overzealous HOA, a workplace bully, or any system that thrives on fear, you have the power to push back. So hit that like button, subscribe, and drop your own stories in the comments. Have you faced an HOA nightmare or a power-tripping cop? Let's keep this conversation going and inspire each other to fight the good fight.